Once upon a time, in a faraway village called Yarakbo, in this village, there lived a beautiful maiden named Ishasha. She was an orphan. Her parents had died, leaving her alone in the world. She lived in a broken and abandoned hut at the edge of the village. Ishasha was quiet and calm, not because she loved silence. Life had forced her into silence. No one in the village spoke to her. The children ran from her. The young men mocked her. Women whispered behind her back. Whenever she greeted anyone, they hissed and called her witch. Ishasha was treated like a discarded calabash thrown away after it had been cracked. But life had not always been this way for her. Her parents had once been wealthy and respected. They owned many farms of yam, cassava, and plantain. They were known throughout the land for their kindness. No stranger ever left their hut hungry. No poor man ever left their farm empty-handed. People even asked themselves if Ishasha's parents were truly humans, because their generosity seemed greater than that of ordinary men and women. Her father used to say, "A man's true wealth is not his farm, but the kindness he shows to people." Her mother often added, "The hand that gives never dries." Ishasha loved her parents deeply. She wanted to grow up and just be like them, kind, generous, and good. But one evening, her joy turned into sorrow. She had gone to the farmland to cut plantains. When she returned home, she did not see her parents. She searched every corner of the compound. She searched the paths and the stream, but she could not find them. Afraid and confused, she ran to the palace. She begged the guards to let her see the king, but they refused. They told her it was too late to disturb the Ovie. She fell on her knees and began to sing. Yare, yare, yabishashare, oh, yare, mama, yare, yare. The king heard her voice from his chamber. The song was full of sorrow. It pierced in his heart. He came out to see who was singing, but when he saw Ishasha, he turned away without saying a word. "Ovie, Ovie, please help me," she cried. "My parents are missing. I cannot find them." But the king walked away angrily and left her there. That night, Ishasha did not sleep. She cried until her voice broke. At dawn, she stepped out of her parents' house, and her eyes met horror. The dead bodies of her parents lay in front of their hut. Their faces were pale, their bodies stiff, and their stomachs swore like that of a pregnant woman. Ishasha screamed. Her cries shook the entire village. People rushed to the scene, and some tried to console her, but her tears did not stop. The next day, the chief priest came to the palace with a message from the gods. He said Ishasha must be brought before the king and the elders. When she arrived, the chief priest declared, "Your parents' deaths are not ordinary. Never before has it been heard in Yarakbo that one goes missing and is found dead before his own hut. The gods said their body must not be buried. They must be thrown into the evil forest where abominations belong. Their land, their wealth, and their hearts all now belong to the village. Not even you, their daughter, must touch them. This is the command of the gods. No one must disobey." The king agreed with the chief priest. He told Ishasha, "Leave your parents' hut before the cock crows. Do not step into their farmland again. The gods have spoken." With those words, the chief priest left without looking back. That was how Ishasha lost her parents, their wealth, and the respect of the village. She moved into the abandoned hut at the end of the village. From that day, the villagers avoided her. They treated her like a curse. They rejected her, forsaken and forgotten. But calamity was not done with her. One night, as she slept in her hut, a tall man with a covered face entered. He forced himself on her and left. Ishasha screamed for help, but no one came. The villager that had once eaten from her parents' kindness turned deaf ears to her pain. Months later, Ishasha's belly began to grow. At first, she thought it was sickness. By the fourth month, she knew she was pregnant. The villagers were shocked. They whispered among themselves, how can Ishasha be pregnant when no one speaks to her? Maybe it is not pregnancy. Maybe it is sickness. Perhaps she carries the child of her spirit husband. Ishisha cried in her heart. She raised her face to the sky and prayed, gods of our land, did you not see when my parents died? Did you not see when I was defied? Now I carry a child I do not know. Are you blind? Oh gods of Yarako, fight for me. 6 months later, something strange than all else happened. The child in her womb began to sing. Yes, the unborn child sang. His voice was sweet like the sound of a flute. Ishisha trembled in fear. She cried, this is strange. How can a child sing before birth? She stayed indoors, hidden from the villagers. But hunger does not listen to fear. One market day, she prayed, O gods of our land, please, silence this child as I go out to beg for food. So she set out to the market. At first, the child was silent. She walked past people without fear. But on her way coming back from the market, the unborn child suddenly began to sing. When she passed two elders, the elders turned around, asking, who is singing? But Ishasha had already ran. When she reached her hut, she collapsed, her body weak, her breath heavy, and her eyes red with tears. She cried, must I suffer like this until I give birth? Will I ever find peace? One morning, while fetching water at the stream, Ishasha met a hunter. As she tried to avoid him, the unborn child began to sing again. The song described the hunter's mood. The hunter froze in shock. Hey! He screamed. My eyes have seen what my mouth cannot say. A child singing in the womb? Ishasha knelt before him. Please, do not tell anyone. They will harm me. But the hunters shouted, the gods forbid me to keep such an evil secret. This child is a curse. Something must be done before the whole village is destroyed. He ran to the palace, shouting, Ajuwe, Ajuwe! My eyes have seen the unthinkable. Immediately, the king summoned Ishasha at once. At first, she denied everything. But then, before the king and the elders, the unborn child began to sing again. His voice filled the palace. The elders screamed, abomination! This womb carries a curse. She must be banished before something terrible happens. The next morning, the villagers gathered. They carried green leaves in their hands and followed Ishasha to the Bantry River. They sang songs of rejection as they flogged her lightly with the leaves. When they reached the river, they drew the leaves at her and turned back. Ishasha crossed the river weeping. Where will I go now? River, swallow me, for I have no home. But the child in her womb sang again, this time a song of hope. The melody touched her heart, and she stopped crying. So she crossed into the forest. Some months later in the forest, she gave birth after 3 days of painful labor. The child that came forth was not ordinary. His hair was long and locked in dread, black and shiny. When Ishasha carried him in her arms, the boy opened his mouth and sang. The song filled the forest like the sound of many flutes. Ishasha called him Unestiri, meaning song of healing. And when she called him, the baby smiled. Days later, an old herbalist woman who had come to the forest to pluck some leaves found Ishasha and the baby. She was small and bent, with white hair that shone like old moonlight. Her teeth were blackened from snuff, but her eyes were sharp and kind. Ishasha flinched at first, thinking the woman was a spirit, but the old woman said gently, beautiful maiden, do not be afraid. I am a human like you. She took them home that same day and sheltered them in her hut not too far from the forest. Ishasha told her everything. The old woman listened and then fed and hid them. In that same village, Ishasha and Unesiri were not tormented by whispering tongues. The child grew under the old woman's care, singing as he played and calming the household with his clear, untroubled voice. Some years later, in Yarako village, trouble deepened. The king's heart began to beat wildly. Sometimes his breath came like a trapped bird and his face went ashen. The king lay long and weak, and no medicine from the village healers could steady him. The elders pleaded with powerful men from far places. A great Divya came from a distant land and told them plainly that the king required a special melody, a voice that was itself a medicine. This is not ordinary cure, he warned. The melody of healing is like the cool breeze that comes after fire. It is not made by any hand. The chief priest went into his shrine to ask the gods, and the gods answered. A voice had sung in the forest, a clear voice that could stop the king's heart from racing and put it in order. The forest they called Ewarode was the land of the spirits. Ordinary humans might not return safely. So the elders organized a party of 5 brave men. The chief priest gave them charms and incantations and strict orders. None of them must eat oil before the journey, an old rule meant to keep the body pure. They set out with power and prayer. In the heart of Elwarode, they walked and called. They searched until their mouths were dry and their eyes were weary. Then they saw him, a small boy with dread hair, singing under a tree as if his song were a small sun, shining only for him. The men believed at once. This must be the voice of healing. But when they drew near, a spirit of the forest sprang before them. Panic seized the men. They ran. The spirit was swift and terrible, and struck them down. One by one they fell. No one returned. When the chief priest heard of the 5 men's fate, he trembled before the gods and went to the palace with hands that shook. The elders cried out in despair, "Gods of our land, help us! 5 strong men have died, and the king lies like a dying fish." Fear settled over Yarapo like a nightfall. One day, a couple who had longed for a child but had been given none were walking home from their farm in a hot afternoon. They met a little girl standing beside the path beneath a bush. She was bafflingly beautiful and would not speak. They thought she had lost her way. "Where are you going?" they asked, but she said only that she could not remember her name. Taking her pithily, they brought her home. They named her Omoisiri, meaning child of healing. They raised her with the tenderness of parents who had waited long for a blessing. Years passed. Omoisiri grew, and one day she surprised her adopted father by saying that she could bring the voice of healing to the village and heal the king. Her father scoffed, for he remembered the 5 men who had died trying. Then the chief priest received a private message from the gods. A little child in the forest could bring the voice of healing. The elders and the chief priest searched the entire village. Fortunately, they found Omoisiri, the girl with no remembered name. The chief priest asked her parents to dress her like a princess and bring her to the shrine before cock crows. But when the priest began to lay his fetches and incantation upon her, she asked him quietly to take them away. She said she did not need the trapping of power to protect her. The chief priest saw that she was not ordinary and let her be. Omoisiri promised she would return whenever she wished. And then the elders believed they had found a path towards the king's recovery. Then she left. Unesiri grew into a strong boy, but his gift of song made him different from every other child. The forest, the birds, and even the river seemed to listen whenever he sang. One afternoon, as he sat under a great iroko tree, humming a tune that carried through the wind, a girl suddenly appeared. She was fair, her skin smooth like ripe mango, her eyes bright like morning stars. "Who are you?" Unesiri asked gently. She laughed softly, and Unesiri was confused. He thought in his mind, "Why is she laughing? Did I say something wrong?" The girl moved closer to him and sat gently beside him under the shade. "I should be the one asking questions," she said with a smile. "Anyway, my name is Omoisiri, daughter of the Ovi of Yarako. I am a princess, but I lost my way." Unesiri looked at her with surprise. "My name is Unesiri. My village is not too far from here. I came to play and sing beneath this tree." He paused, thinking. Our names sound alike. Is this just a chance, or is there meaning in it? From that moment, the two children became friends. They started playing together, laughing together, and sharing stories. That evening, Unisiri took Omoisiri to his mother's court. When Ishasha saw Omoisiri, her heart pounded like a drum. She pulled Unisiri aside and whispered sharply, "Who is this girl? Where did you find her?" Unisiri bowed his head and begged, "Mama, she lost her way. I only brought her here to help her." But Ishasha's face grew hard. "I warned you, my son. Do not bring strangers to this hut. This path you walk will lead to trouble." That same evening, the old herbalist woman returned. The moment her eyes fell on Omoisiri, her face grew pale. She stared at the girl long and hard. Omoisiri too stared back, as though the two recognized each other in silence. When night came and Omoisiri slept, Ishasha, Unesiri, and the old woman sat outside by the fire. The old woman shook her head and said, "Unesiri, I warned you not to wander. You have disobeyed. Did you know the danger you have brought to this house?" Unesiri knelt before her, pleading, "Nene, forgive me. I meant no harm." His mother added softly, "Please forgive him. He's only a child." The old woman sighed deeply. "Be careful with that girl. Send her back to wherever she came from. A child of destiny must not play carelessly." But fate does not listen to warnings. The next day, Unesiri and Omoisiri went together into the forest. Inside a small hut made of palm fronds, Unesiri began to sing. His voice was rich and deep, like water flowing from a sacred spring. The melody was so sweet, so emotional, that Omoisiri's eyes filled with tears. Softly, she said to him, "Unesiri, I need your help. My father, the king of Yarapo, has been sick for many years now. My mother told me his illness began when I was only 2. The priest declared that only the voice of healing could cure him. For years, we searched in vain. But now, I know you are the one. Please, my friend, come with me. Sing for my father. Save his life." Unesiri looks at her, torn between fear and compassion. At last, he said, "I will follow you. Not today, but tomorrow." That night, as the crickets sang and the fire burned low, Unesiri told to his mother, "Mama, where is Yarapo village?" Ishasha froze. Her heart skipped. She asked in a trembling voice, "Why did you ask me that name? Who told you of Yarapo?" Unesiri lowered his head. "No one, Mama. I only wish to know." But Ishasha refused to answer. The name of that village was a wound in her heart, and she would not reopen it. Before the first cock crowed, Unesiri and Omosiri slipped away quietly. They did not tell Ishasha nor the old woman. When Ishasha woke up and found her son missing, her heart broke. She searched the bush. She called his name, but no answer came. She rushed to the spot where Unesiri often sat, but it was empty. She remembered his question about Yarabo, and fear struck her like thunder. At once, she prepared herself. Anger burned in her chest. Pain and agony pushed her forward. She marched towards Yarabo, crying aloud, "If anything happens to my child, I will bring down this village. Yarabo, you showed me wickedness. Today you shall taste my bitterness." When the villagers saw her, they scattered in fear. A ghost has risen from the forest," they screamed, for they had long believed Ishesha was dead. Meanwhile, in the palace, the chief priest and the elders welcomed Unesiri. "Great one," they said, "sing for our king, that his life may be restored." Omaisiri, standing beside him, pleaded gently, "Unesiri, sing for my father." Unesiri opened his mouth, but before the first note came, he heard his mother's voice. He turned, and there she was, fiercing, weeping, running to him. She grabbed his hand. "My son, do not sing. This place is not safe. They will use you and kill us both. Come, let's go." Omaisiri was crying. "Unesiri, please, sing for my father. Do not let him die." Unesiri stood between them, confused. torn apart by love for his mother and friendship for Omesiri. Ishasha's eyes blazed. She turned to the elders. So this was your plan? You used this girl to lure my son. You took my parents. You stole our words. You cast me into the wilderness. And now you want my child? Never. Let your king die. Let your village rot. The chief priest bowed low and said gently, Ishasha, we wronged you. We confess. But do not punish us for the sins of the past. Forgive us. Let your son sing. The gods themselves are choosing him. Do not allow the father of your son to die. Immediately the chief priest mentioned the father of your son. Ishasha's heart shattered. The truth dawned. The king who had defied her that night was the same man lying sick upon the throne. Her cries shook the palace. So this king is the father of my child. Oh, even beyond measure. You ruled me, and now you want his life to save you? No, let him die. She clutched Unesiri, but the boy touched her hand gently. His eyes glowed with innocence. Mama, let me sing. My gift is not for hatred, it is for healing. At last, Ishasha's anger broke into tears. She released him. Unesiri began to sing. His voice rose like a mountain wind, soft yet strong, piercing every heart. The melody swept through the palace, through the village, into the fields and the river. The sea king opened his eyes. His breath returned. He stood from his bed, hid completely. The villagers shouted with joy. They ran to see the wonder, and they saw that the boy who hid their king was none other than Ishasha's son, the banished child. The stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. When Unesiri's voice healed the king, the palace shook with shouts of wonder. The villagers poured in from every corner, dancing, clapping, ululating. The talking drum beat. The flute whistled like birds in mountain season. The palace square became a festival ground. The Ovie, now fully healed, stood tall. His voice, once weak, thundered again. From this day, Ishasha is restored. The farmland stolen from our family shall be returned. The wealth we seized shall be returned. The honor we buried shall be returned. Let the whole village know, Unesiri is my son, the son of the Ovie, and he shall be called voice of healing until the end of time. The people roared in agreement. They chanted his name until the earth seemed to tremble. But Ishasha did not dance. Her eyes were wet, her face pale with old pain. She muttered bitterly, You rejoice today, but did you remember how you cast me out? You called me witch. You flogged me with leaves. You drew me into the forest like a refuse. Today you bow before my child, but yesterday you spat on me. A scar may be he, but it never forgets. The chief priest fell to his knees before her. Forgive us, daughter of the land. We confess our wickedness. But if you curse us, we shall all wither. Spare the village for the sake of your son. Ishasha turned away, but Onesiri touched her hand and whispered, Mama, water cannot quarrel with its paws. Let the past go. My song is for healing, not for revenge. Her heart softened, though the wound remained. That night, as the moon rose like a silver calabash in the sky, Omoisiri came to Nesiri. She smiled, but her eyes were full of sorrow. My friend, she said, my task is complete. The God sent me to find you, to bring your voice to heal the king. Now that he is whole, I must return to the place where spirits dwells. I am not only a princess, I am only a messenger of destiny. Unesiri heart broke. Omoisiri, stay with me. You are my friend, my joy. Must you go? She touched his face gently. The song of healing belongs to the world, not to one's heart. You will be greater than this village. Your melody will travel across rivers, mountains, and kingdoms. Do not tie yourself to me. Remember me in your songs, and we shall meet again in the land where souls do not depart. Before his eyes, Almighty faded like a mist before the morning sun. Her laughter echoed faintly, and then she was gone. Unesiri wept. He sang a song of farewell, and the whole village heard it. It was so sorrowful that even the night birds kept silent to listen. From that day, Unesiri became a healer of nations. People traveled from far and wide to hear his voice. The blind regained sight, the lame walked, and the barren conceived when he sang. His fame spread beyond Yarapo, beyond rivers and deserts, until his name was known in distant lands. But wherever he went, he carried the memory of Omoisiri, the mysterious princess who brought him to his destiny. In his songs, her names always lived. As for Ishasha, though she became the obvious wife, she never allowed her heart to love him. She lived with him, but her loyalty was only to her son. She would often say, "The gods used my tears to water a tree of greatness. My pain was the fire that forged a voice of healing." And so, the story is told in Yarapo and beyond that the rejected woman gave birth to the chosen one, that the child who sang in the womb became the healer of nations, that the laughter of Omoisiri still flows in the songs of Unesiri. And whenever the griots gather under the moonlight, they end the tale with this proverb: "The stone the builders rejected has become the head of the corner, and the song of sorrow has become the song of healing."